on noise, abandoned vehicles, and reckless scooter driving. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
Is this the tether?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Both of LA's Major League Baseball teams got a win last night. The Dodgers beat San Diego 6-3. Shohei Ohtani had his first pitching performance in almost 2 years. Ohtani pitched the first inning. He gave up 1 run and 2 hits. At the plate, Ohtani had 2 hits and 2 RBIs. The Dodgers and Padres meet up again tonight at Dodger Stadium. The Angels beat the Yankees 1-0 in 11 innings in New York. Angels manager Ryan Washington used 6 pitchers to keep the Yankees scoreless. The Angels and Yankees are back at Yankee Stadium tonight. The Oklahoma City Thunder are 1 win away from their first NBA championship in franchise history. The Thunder beat Indiana 120-109 to take a 3-2 lead in the best-of-7 NBA Finals. OKC got a career-high 40 points from Jalen Williams. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander dropped 31 points and 10 assists. Game 6 is Thursday night in Indianapolis. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
LA's newest soul food restaurant is getting spectacular reviews. Great place with amazing food. The Sunday champagne brunch is fabulous. I saw the place on IG. We tried it for lunch. We were blown away by the food and the service. The restaurant has an inviting atmosphere and a dynamic vibe. Over the years, Lionel has catered most major Black events in Los Angeles, including all of our KBLA Talk 1580 gatherings. But now he has his own spot, Lionel's Soul Food Cuisine, and you need to check it out at 8501 South Vermont Avenue in Los Angeles. Oxtails, baked or fried chicken, meatloaf, turkey chops, pork chops, catfish, short ribs, and all the fixins. Collard greens, mac and cheese, yams, red beans, black-eyed peas, and more. And of course, hot water cornbread, satisfying drinks, and delicious desserts. Lionel's is a great place for brunch, lunch, or dinner. If it's good enough for us, it's good enough for you, because we've got your black. So, head on over to Lionel's Soul Food Cuisine at 8501 South Vermont Avenue in Los Angeles and tell Lionel you heard about it on KBLA Talk 1580.
White diamonds, 2 a.m. she wildin'. She sick, got they stomach in her comments. What school you went to? Gardena, Compton, Westchester, King, True, did we function? Lil, but that dog give me that some pup. All my kids are sucking up. Have you ever took a fade and ran 3 more back to back? Oh, you haven't? Then shut the up and keep it rap. I'm from the land. Don't say you hate LA when you don't travel past the 10. Am I tripping? Yes, I am. Meditate over some money. I see Franklin, I find Zen. I'm from the land. Don't say you hate LA, but live in LA and pretend. My neck on Tarantino, Alejandro slightly.
Happy birthday, K-Dot. It is Kendrick Lamar's Gemini B-Day, Gemini season. And guess who's in the studio? He is an organizer. Is that what you call it? Organizer with Braver Angels, former vice chair of the Republican Party here. He is also the only Republican who has his own show on KBLA Talk 1580 and is kind enough to come and talk with me on a Talking Point Tuesday. John Wood Jr., good to see you.
Dominique DiPrima, always good to see you.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So Braver Angels is an organization of which you are a leader, and you've really brought that organization into the national spotlight over the past, I don't know, how many years?
7-8 years since spring of 2018.
Which, of course, that that is something that seems almost custom made for this particular moment in trying to bring civility into politics.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of what's dispiriting about American life these days is how much craziness we just sort of take as more or less normal, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's across a wide range of things, from sort of the dysfunctioning of our institutions to the breakdown of our ability to even have sort of dinner table conversations over some of the things that are, you know, starkly controversial.
Yeah, I'm still
and
not I'm talking to my relative.
I get it. But of course, political violence is sort of the great extreme manifestation of that phenomenon, right? And I don't want to pretend to know more than I do about the shooter in Minnesota, but it damn sure looks political, right?
Yeah.
And I think that they did discover a manifesto on the individual and so forth. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a great tragedy. 2 lawmakers and their spouses shot.
And 2 dead.
And 2 dead. That's right. So, you know, I mean, it's tough. I mean, I think that there's always a twofold sort of war to be waged within the soul of every individual. It's like, on the one hand, you have to be able to strive for the things that you believe in, advocate for them according to the moral seriousness with which the issues, you know, dictate. And on the other hand, just in terms of how we affect the environment around us, we have to find a way to do what you and I do, I think, pretty well, Dominique, which is to actually be able to speak across the differences that might make you want to strangle the person next to you, but it's like we still got love for each other, right? Now,
yeah, I mean,
now crazy people are going to be crazy people.
Right.
But if the environment is toxic enough, what that happens is crazy folks who might have otherwise stayed, you know, in line, I think, experience a sense of permission to sort of take the next step and do more radical things. And that's kind of how it works for everybody. Wherever you naturally are on the spectrum of mental stability, if the environment becomes worse, you're likely to take 1 or 2 steps further.
Right. That's
than
why
that.
shrinks
Right.
say to calm down, do your breathing exercises, you know, don't get all amped up.
Yeah.
Don't get people all amped up. And one of the things that continually baffles me about you, I mean, we're friends, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine, friends across the aisle.
My mystery wrapped in an enigma.
Well, the thing that baffles me about you is that you take this moral high ground and you have this idea of civility in politics, which you've expressed through this organization, but also just the way you move in life. But yet some of the things that you support, to me, it makes my head explode. I cannot marry those 2 things in my mind. Maybe I'll get there, but I'm not there yet.
Well, you'd have to throw me some examples.
Yeah, I'm about to. You know, I'm winding. You know, I'm winding up here. I'm winding up. Yeah. So you raised the two a lawmaker and her husband that were murdered or assassinated in Minnesota, and then 2 other lawmakers shot. The bludgeoning of Nancy Pelosi's husband with a hammer. The setting afire of Josh Shapiro's home, governor of Pennsylvania, the attempted kidnapping of the governor.
Gretchen
Whitmer.
Right, Michigan. Right.
And so all of these, here's one of my talking points here for Talking Point Tuesday, is the both sidesing of this. Political violence is on the rise. And in one recent editorial in the New York Times, they have those examples, and then they have the attempted assassination of President Trump and the attacks on Tesla dealers, as if killing a person or trying to kidnap a person and this persistent violence from the right is equivalent to attacking a Tesla dealer. I mean, of course, the assassination attempt is another issue, but
yeah. Well, and of course, also Republican Majority Leader, and this was a few years ago, but you remember when Steve Scalise, of course, was shot on that baseball field at the congressional baseball game.
And it was condemned by people on both
absolutely.
sides.
I mean, I would
I just think there's both sidesing that is not. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean,
even
I
if
would
you
have
take
to-
it beyond lawmakers to the Kyle Rittenhouses of the world, and this is this is the anniversary today of the Mother Emanuel shooting. It's not political. It's not the same on both sides. Most of this political violence is coming from your side of the aisle.
Well, I mean, I would have to see a data-driven sort of breakdown.
Where's
of that.
where's the left-wing Kyle Rittenhouse?
Well, I mean, maybe there's not a
Where's the left-wing Dylan Roof?
Kyle Rittenhouse.
So why do you need data? It's
if you're talking about the phenomenon of political violence. Look, I'm not really trying to. For all I know, you're correct. I think it depends on
who usually has the guns, John. It's common sense.
Well, I mean, if we want to go back
I'm a 2A person, but who usually has the weaponry?
I mean, you're putting me in a position here where I, sort of push to try and defend something that I'm not sure I necessarily want to defend. I mean, I think that if we take a look at high-profile incidents of political violence, I think there have probably been more on the right in recent years. Obviously, if we look at public demonstrations and protests, you're going to see a lot of examples of some people who are just criminals taking advantage of protests, such as in L.A.
They're
and elsewhere.
not killing people.
But sometimes people,
They're not murdering people, though, or trying to murder people.
No, I don't think so.
No, people aren't dying at demonstrations than.
But you do have political violence on the left. You do have Antifa up in Portland and in parts of the Pacific Northwest.
Antifa is a concept, not really an organization. It's a concept.
Well, it's a concept.
And who has that concept killed?
Real weapons.
Okay, well, give me an example of a dead person that Antifa has killed.
I'm not sure that Antifa has killed anybody,
right?
Not to my knowledge, But I think that it is important, while conceding the possibility that political violence, particularly when it comes to mortal incidents, may be a bigger problem on the right than on the left. And again, I haven't seen. It's easy to cite headlines.
Did you see January 6th? Did you notice that? Did that?
Yes, I noticed.
Have you seen anything like that on the left? There's nothing close. There's nothing even close.
And there was an officer, of course, who I think died in the aftermath of January 6th. And their initial. Yeah. I've always been a little confused about those reports because they seem to fluctuate pretty wildly.
Yeah,
but January 6th was January 6th. I mean, it was a terrible incident. It just goes to show that nobody has to die in order for political violence to be, reprehensible. And I guess my point is just that I want to be able to come at these things from the level of principle because, 4-8 years from now, even if you do have more incidents on the right than on the left, that doesn't mean that that's necessarily the way it's going to be tomorrow. That's not always the way it was yesterday.
No, but we have to address where we are right now, especially when the FBI has repeatedly reported that domestic terror from white supremacist groups is the number one national security problem in the United States.
And that's even its own category, right? I mean, it's not as if most white supremacists are like mainstream Republicans, sort of,
I think they are, to be honest with you.
Certainly not people who are.
I don't know how you define mainstream. We could just say Republicans.
Certainly not people who are engaged in,
maybe they're not. Most of them are not running for office, maybe, but.
Well, I mean,
who are the supporters? Most of those January 6th folks were Republican supporters of Trump.
Yeah,
they were mostly white supremacists.
I don't. Were they mostly white?
Yes.
Were they mostly
Proud
white
Boys?
supremacists? Well, they weren't mostly Proud Boys. There were Proud Boys who were there. And of course, the guy who was arrested, who's the lead prep, I forget his name, but he's an Afro-Cuban. Dude,
Tarrio,
right?
Enrique Tarrio.
Yeah, Enrique Tarrio, right?
Yeah.
But
he's in the sunken place for sure.
But my only point, Dominique, is because again, I mean, you might be right as a statistical matter. I haven't seen the breakdown, but my point is that as a society, we do have to confront things from the level of principle, right? And it's not just that violence is bad. Obviously, that's the case. It's the absence of a consciousness that aspires towards the beloved community that is really the principal problem, in my view. There has to be a vision of American democracy and American society where all of us have these sort of ability to see in one another people who we have a moral commitment to honoring in a spirit of justice and equality, right? And there's got to be a narrative around American identity that brings people together in this way without glossing over the realities of systematic racism or inequality or threats to freedom of speech or the things that people legitimately care about in our discourse, which means that we have to find a way to talk about things that doesn't automatically start off by framing and polarizing everything through a partisan and a tribal lens. And I think that if you're trying to understand where I'm coming from, the political discourse, you and I are going to agree and disagree on all sorts of political issues and political framings.
No doubt.
But I do think that it is possible for us to sort of create the space, so to speak, where conversations can flourish towards justice and a greater sort of sense of equality and freedom in America. But it's a moral thing. It's a spiritual thing, right? At least for me. And, so I'm not, I never want to get like hung up trying to defend the indefensible when it comes to things that certain Republicans do or certain black people do or whatever the case may be. I always want to try and, approach things from the vantage point of a reverence for truth so we can make the space for love and understanding and democracy. And
well said.
Yeah.
I do think that if a person has a problem and they don't, or a group of persons have a problem and they are not willing to confront it, it's highly unlikely that problem is going to go away.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think the Republican Party has a white supremacy problem, a violence problem. And that doesn't mean that I think it can never happen the other way around. I know a lot of people who believe President Trump set up those assassination attempts to make himself more popular. But if in fact they were real, then I'm against that. I don't think you get to just kill people, whether you agree with them or disagree with them. Even if you think they're ruining your country, you don't get to just kill people. That's not what we do. Yeah, right. And so I think this, while I respect your reverence for truth, I think right now there's some investigation is warranted because I believe the Republican Party has a white supremacy problem.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the FBI numbers and whatnot in a little while, but at least as of 2 years ago, and I'm sure it's probably still true today, the greatest domestic terrorism threats in the United States come from white supremacist organizations, and there are murder figures and killings that can be tracked down on that side of things, right? So no, I'm not trying to minimize that as an issue at all. But I do think I have a larger concern that the environment of America is pushing us in a direction to where, particularly if institutions start going down, if the economy tanks, if we have a global sort of war situation against the backdrop of a domestic environment where we have American military sort of on the streets of American cities and so forth, we haven't. Well, summer of 2020 was a serious time in America. Yeah. But you go back to the 1960s and whatnot. I mean, there was a level of social and civil unrest and violence and so forth that we're not accustomed to. Right.
I do want to take that on when we come forward. I think it's a really important issue. Obviously, as we sit in Los Angeles, California, in the studio, John Wood Jr. is here. It's a Talking Point Tuesday. I'm Dominique DiPrima for KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. You ready?
Somebody make some noise in this joint.
KBLA Talk 1580 celebrates its 4th anniversary this year on Juneteenth.
There we go again.
Holla. Hard to believe 4 years has gone by so fast.
Oh my God.
But here we are, still standing, still loving and serving our people as best we can.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
To celebrate our 4th anniversary, we have 4 big events, and you're invited to all of them.
She got a lot to say. Let's do this.
Let's get it on.
On Wednesday, June 18th, we go live on C-SPAN for the 2nd consecutive year with our Climate Justice Plus Black Health Symposium. Tavis Smiley will moderate an all-star panel of thinkers and influencers as we continue our vitally important climate justice work.
Hey, Tavis Smiley, talk about.
On Thursday, June 19th, you're invited to join us as we celebrate Juneteenth and our 4th anniversary. There will be plenty of food, fun, great music, good vibes, and all of your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts will be there.
Yeah, man.
Flip the beat. On Saturday, June 21st, there are 2 big events you're invited to attend.
I can't wait to hear it.
This year, KBLA Talk 1580 continues its annual partnership with the Empowerment Congress for a community celebration and dialogue to educate, engage, and empower. This year's theme is resilience in the face of chaos.
Can't wait to see what's up next.
Y'all ain't ready for this.
And new this year is our State of Black Women in Los Angeles Symposium, moderated by Dominique DiPrima, with a luncheon to follow. Dominique will be leading a dialogue with some of the most impactful Black women leaders in Los Angeles, and you're invited to join.
This is it.
All of these events are free, but seating is limited, so you must register in advance at our KBLA1580.com website, where you can find all the details you need about each event.
Check it out.
It's our 4th anniversary, and we would love to celebrate it with you.
I love you guys so much. There's nothing you can do about it.
We're KBLA Talk 1580.
The only black talk radio station west of the Mississippi.
Thank you for having our black.
Happy anniversary, KBLA!
Love you.
The IRS finally caught up with Louie.
I hadn't paid my taxes in 8 years. I owe the IRS a lot of money.
Louie was in deep trouble.
We're going to take your house, put a lien on your bank account, garnish your pay. They don't care. They're going to take your paycheck.
Louie found out about Optima Tax Relief, the leading tax resolution firm. A-plus rated by the Better Business Bureau, they've resolved over $1 billion for their clients.
Optima Tax, they help me. They calm me down. They make me feel comfortable, and I trust them.
Louie has a lot to be thankful for.
I don't owe the IRS anymore, and I'm able to live a comfortable life, a lot better life. It was because of Optima Tax.
For tax help you can trust, call Optima now for a free consultation. Take it from Louie.
If you owe the IRS, don't go it alone. Give Optima Tax a call. They can help you.
Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Testimonial from an actual client. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
John Wood Jr. is my guest. He is actually my colleague here at KBLA, which is pretty funny because I've been interviewing you since I was on a different radio station.
That's right.
And back then, you were still my favorite Republican.
Oh. We go back a ways, don't we?
Yeah, we go back.
Yeah.
But now you can find John Wood Jr. here on KBLA, not just on my show where he's kind enough to come and argue with me from time to time, but you can hear him Sundays at 9 o'clock in the morning on the Reconstruction Project with John Wood Jr.
Yes, ma'am.
Speaking of Reconstruction Project, we're going to have to get you in here on a Freedman Friday so we can talk about reparations. That'll be fun.
Always happy to chop it up on that. Yeah, no, without a doubt.
But you brought up, not just the militarization that's happening in our streets right now, but the protest and pointing out the era of the 60s and perhaps people not being accustomed to that level of protest, the 2020s, where it went worldwide. But I didn't see what we're seeing now with the Immigration Customs Enforcement and Homeland Security coming out masked and just snatching people off the street without even announcing what agency they're from or on what grounds that person is being arrested or detained. Many times folks cannot be found, located by their family, friends. This concerns me. The revocation of green cards and visas. I am not aware of that happening either in 2020 or the 60s.
But you can buy a Trump card, though.
Yeah, well, I couldn't because I don't have the money, or I would. Well, even though I'm already a citizen, if I get a Trump card and and I'm already a citizen, does that mean I'm like impervious to everything? I can commit crimes like the January 6th people, and I just like
sounds like that might be what a Trump card would do for you. A good investment.
Let's save up. Maybe we can split.
For folks who don't know what we're talking about, there is something called a Trump card where, as difficult, and you and I were just talking about, my family's working to get my brother's fiance from South Africa over here. They got married in South Africa, but trying to get her here. But immigration is difficult internationally right now, obviously.
Yeah.
Certain Trump policies. But there's something you can buy called a Trump card. that you can spend thousands of dollars on that I guess will help.
It's $1 million. It's $1 million plus. It's not
Is it
thousands.
$1 million plus? Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah.
It was
Anyway,
that well.
go ahead
Gee,
and
Lord.
finish explaining.
Well, I think that, and so yeah, that and these cards help facilitate your coming into the country, right, and purchasing
$5 million.
Is it really $5 million?
Yep, it's a $5 million.
Good Lord, right?
Well, that's
So
what we're going to be saving for a bit.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay, yeah. No, I need to check my interest rates, my investments, and whatnot. But the idea that this is something to be purchased is it's almost like the Catholic Church selling indulgences or whatnot. Back in the, right?
Can you still buy those? No, that's
Right,
gone out of style.
Well, Trump might bring that back too. You never know.
Well, you saw he was trying to be Pope.
Exactly. Right. But to your point about the history, I mean, yeah, the deportations, the Irish, of course, that is unprecedented because I was talking about the 60s. But of course, around the time that of the Watts riots and the civil rights movement and so forth, that was also the period of time where immigration policy was expanded in the United States of America. In terms of the family-linked migrations and so forth. And so much of the larger waves of Latin immigration to America, not that we didn't always have Latin Americans in America, obviously, the border crossed them in the Southwest. But in terms of the...
because we took the territory that we're sitting in right now, yeah.
But in terms of the larger volume of immigration from south of the border, that really began during that era.
But it's not
and
just
now 60 years later.
I mean, it's not just south of the border. They're deporting Haitians. And almost all the countries on the list of don't come here countries are black.
Yeah,
almost every African country on there is there on their expanded list. Hurry up, because South Africa, I can't believe they're not on there yet.
Yeah, right. Well,
but the question really is whether whatever the situation, whether you're okay with masked people, masked law enforcement, snatching people off the streets with no warrant, with no due process, and sending them to El Salvador or wherever. That seems to be an escalation. It is an escalation.
I wrote a piece in USA Today. First of all, identifying myself as somebody who not only thinks of himself as conservative, but somebody who thinks of himself as conservative on the subject of immigration and certainly border security. I mean, I definitely was somebody who wanted to see an overall sort of, tightening of the southern border in a significant way.
But not the northern border?
I think that...
Only the southern border?
Well, I guess the northern border, anywhere to where there is a large volume of undocumented or illegal crossings. But that's a much bigger problem in the southern border than it is in the northern border, just by in terms of just the math of it. But my point,
because the Canadians fly in and just overstay their visas.
Well, yeah, I mean, sure. So that makes it less of a border problem per se. It doesn't mean you don't have an immigration problem from Canada necessarily. Although I'd like to see the numbers on that. But the thing that I pointed out in the piece is that even if you're somebody like me who's conservative on the question of border security and who thinks that we need to have a rational process, it's not conservative to go into American communities, tearing up American communities. Conservatism in its tradition is supposed to be about the preservation of community. It's supposed to be about recognizing the fact that different communities have different characteristics and features and demographics, and you need to respect the relationships that exist between people who are building community together. And I think that the thing that a lot of people don't understand about Los Angeles is that even though somebody's undocumented, it doesn't mean that they're not a part of the community, right? I grew up with Latinos. I grew up with Mexicans in my schools and my neighborhoods, within my own family, right? And some of them have, kids my age had citizenship through the 14th Amendment through an interpretation that I don't really agree with. I do think the 14th Amendment.
We're about to go into news, traffic, and sports. Right. Can't wait to hear your interpretation of the 14th Amendment. Sure. Prester John wants to know if you're a member of Project 2021, and I venture to say no, he's not.
Project 21.
Yeah, see, he does not. Okay, news, traffic, and sports, and we'll continue this conversation about immigration because certainly it's a hot one right now.
Okay.
Talking Point Tuesday, KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to gear with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tammy Eswick with BIN News Now. President Trump is back in the U.S. after leaving the G7 summit early, leading some to speculate that he's planning on talking with Israel about the bombing of Iran and providing more support. Yesterday, he called for everyone to evacuate the capital of Iran, Tehran. Iran captured the moment an Israeli bomb hit the state TV studio during a live broadcast. This audio may be disturbing to some. That anchor jumped from her seat but returned after the smoke cleared to finish her broadcast. The price tag for the LA anti-ICE protests have cost the city almost $20 million. That's according to the city itself. The city says they're also looking at $500,000 in property damage. In the Sean Combs sex trafficking trial, a black juror was dismissed for a white juror after he couldn't answer where he lived. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Both of LA's Major League Baseball teams got a win last night. The Dodgers beat San Diego 6-3. Shohei Ohtani had his first pitching performance in almost 2 years. Ohtani pitched the first inning. He gave up 1 run and 2 hits. At the plate, Ohtani had 2 hits and 2 RBIs. The Dodgers and Padres meet up again tonight at Dodger Stadium. The Angels beat the Yankees 1-0 in 11 innings in New York. Angels manager Ron Washington used 6 pitchers to keep the Yankees scoreless. The Angels and Yankees are back at Yankee Stadium tonight. The Oklahoma City Thunder are 1 win away from their first NBA championship in franchise history. The Thunder beat Indiana 120-109 to take a 3-2 lead in the best-of-7 NBA Finals. OKC got a career-high 40 points from Jalen Williams. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander dropped 31 points and 10 assists. Game 6 is Thursday night in Indianapolis. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Every mother deserves a healthy and joyous pregnancy and birth, and every baby deserves to thrive. That's why the Los Angeles County Abundant Birth Project is here. The Abundant Birth Project is a guaranteed income program that provides cash during pregnancy to pregnant individuals at the highest risk of preterm and low birth rate babies. Although program enrollment has closed, our commitment to Black joy and thriving continues. Through tailored services that foster mental well-being and community-based resources, we provide care and support during pregnancy and after the baby is born to help build brighter futures for our families. Join us in celebrating abundant births in LA County. For more information, please visit abundantbirthproject.org. abundantbirthproject.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Worried about eviction? You have rights, and Stay Housed LA can help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between LA County, the City of Los Angeles, and local service providers. From Lancaster to Long Beach, we're here to help you with tenant education workshops, legal clinics, free legal services for eligible tenants, and online resources about tenant protection laws. Don't face eviction alone. Call our hotline at 1-888-694-0040. That's 1-888-694-0040. Or visit stayhousedla.org. Stay Housed LA, keeping Los Angeles residents in their homes. Stay Housed LA, your rights, your home, our community. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Thanks for starting your morning off with a voice that speaks truth to power and the powerless, getting to the heart of what matters most in our community. This is where authentic conversation meets real action. From breaking news and politics to culture and community solutions, This is where you hear perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. This is where we come together, get informed, and make change happen. You're inside First Things First with Dominique DiPrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
Good morning, sunshine. You make my day.
Heard any other talk radio lately that sounds anything like this? We didn't think so. You're listening to Unapologetically Progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
John Wood Jr. is with me on a Talking Point Tuesday. You can hear him every week if you want to on Sundays. The Reconstruction Project
that's
with
right.
John Wood Jr. And he is our sole evidence of bipartisanship in this building.
I'll be the token. That's all right.
Yeah, you be the token. You ain't the token black guy. At least you don't have to worry about that. Unlike,
I'm usually either the only black guy in the room or the only Republican in the room. It's one or the other.
So either way, you're special.
There you go.
Either way, you're very special.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about the 14th Amendment and this idea of birthright citizenship. So it sounded like you were teeing up to say you agree with Trump that we should revoke birthright citizenship.
Well, I do not agree that Trump has the power in terms of being the president of the United States to do that with an executive order, right? So no, I don't. I disagree with that action. I think it's another example of the president usurping constitutional authorities, which he does not have.
Which we have so many examples right now.
But as a matter of, take Trump out of it, as a matter of constitutional interpretation, I do think that the 14th Amendment was instantiated for the benefit of enfranchising freed slaves, right? Hence African Americans. So just as a matter of constitutional history, I do believe that. But my primary point in all of this is that those conservative points of view of mine notwithstanding, what I see happening right now is a grossly unconservative bludgeoning through American communities and a usurping of non-constitutional powers to essentially plant American military personnel in American communities that, against the backdrop of Trump's military parade and so on and so forth, paints a picture of a president who is aspiring towards, I don't want to sound hyperbolic, but, if you're writing a book about a president who tries to become a quasi-dictatorial figure in American life, it would go something like what it is what we're experiencing right now. Look, Reuters came out with a report suggesting that only about a third or so of the people who have been rounded up in these ICE raids are people with identifiable criminal convictions, right? Which means that as many as 2/3 of people are just folks, like to your point, that they're just grabbing up in front of Home Depot and other places where they can find them, right?
And the other point is that not many of them, there are many that are undocumented, but there are various reasons. Some of them have been going through the refugee process, and then, Attorney Nana Jomfi tells me they're waiting outside the courtroom as soon as the case is dismissed. So 2 minutes ago they were legal, right? And then 2 minutes later they're in some kind of limbo status. Right. People having green cards revoked means they were here legally. People having visas revoked means they were here legally.
Sure.
And American citizens getting arrested means they are here legally. That is not just morally problematic, it seems legally problematic.
Yeah, that's right. But the entire pattern of the administration, from my vantage point, has been to try and test the limits of their ability to push past the confines of the law without experiencing repercussions, right? And it does seem as if the only check, and Governor Newsom said this, it does seem like the only check on the administration is the courts, right? To the extent to which they feel bound by the judgments of the courts, which has seemed to itself be limited in certain cases. So, all of that is very much concerning. It doesn't mean that, myself as conservative, that I don't feel that there is a serious immigration problem, right? I do. But,
so what's your solution? I mean, you made it clear.
Look, I mean, I feel like most Americans were generally. I feel like there was a consensus in this country going back over several years around the idea of securing the border, putting together a reasonable pathway towards citizenship, and having some grace for people, particularly children who have been here for some time or who were brought here
or their whole
not
lives,
according to their
many
own
times,
choice and so forth. Right, exactly. To make reasonable accommodations for people who are brought here as children, who are here working and contributing to the economy or what have you, right? While having low tolerance for people who are committing violent crimes and things of that nature.
But we've never had a comprehensive immigration. We've never had a clear, and that's, Republicans, speaking of talking points, love to say it's Biden, Biden, Biden. But we can go all the way back, and we have not had a clear, consistent, non-racist immigration policy. Our immigration policy is consistently anti-black. That is the one consistent thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because again, this felt like an issue that there could have been progress on at different points. I mean, you may remember.
Yeah, like right before the election,
when
the Democrats were willing to acquiesce to what Republicans wanted, and Trump took it off the table because he wanted to run on that issue.
Well, yes, there was that. But then, go back a few years further, there was the Gang of Eight proposal. You had Marco Rubio and I think Chuck Schumer and John McCain and so forth who came together over a piece of legislation that I think Barack Obama had problems with at the time that didn't sail through.
Even though he was the deporter in chief, I mean, he deported more people than Trump has.
Yeah, I mean that's what the numbers say. And I'm always curious as to how they define deportations under Obama, because I think some of it was sort of turning people back at the border and calling that a deportation.
Well, the other thing is what they're doing now. Who they're going to surpass because they're deporting people who are here legally.
Well, talk about a way to bump up the numbers. And it's also probably true that the Obama administration would have had much more compliance and coordination with state and local governments to the extent to which they were enforcing some of those policies, because they weren't at war with California the way Donald Trump is. But if you go back all the way back to George W. Bush, I mean, George W. Bush tried to push forward a comprehensive and I think humane immigration reform policy that had the support of Democrats, but was blocked by particularly Southern Republican senators back in those days. So, I mean, it's an interesting thing because within the Republican Party, there's been a split on this. You may remember Texas Governor Rick Perry saying something along the lines of like, if you don't believe that the children of undocumented immigrants in Texas are deserving of public education, you don't have a heart, right? There was a constituency.
Yeah, that was a different Republican Party, though.
It's funny because
they
it wasn't.
Tar and feather him
today. They would,
to quote the Speaker of the House when talking about our governor.
But it wasn't too long. It wasn't too long ago, though. It's just the interesting thing about it.
Yeah, so, it wasn't long ago at all. Just like slavery.
Well, I mean. Yeah. Yeah, you start to zoom out,
But I mean, the point is that, it's one of those issues. People like to point fingers. They don't come with real solutions. And even you talk about a split within the Republican Party, you've got a split within the Republican president right now. Out of one side of his mouth, he's snatching kids from school graduations and court. Out of the other side of his mouth, he's saying, we're going to stop taking people off of farms, restaurants, and hotels.
He's hearing from industry.
Right.
He's hearing from industry on that.
You can't have it both ways. The people are already hiding in their homes.
I kind of think Trump.
They're already scared to go to work.
Trump always gets it both ways. A little bit because Trump is so transactional,
Yeah.
So I mean, I never really see Donald Trump as being somebody with a clear philosophy of anything. It's just sort of whatever makes sense to his interests at the time. But I do think that some issues are complicated and you have to figure out a complex answer to them, and that's the challenge. I don't think that's the challenge in immigration. I think the challenge has always been the political will, right? And just being able to marshal
and how do you take the anti-blackness out of our policy, which is so blatant right now with these countries on the you can't come here list, basically all the N-word countries.
in Arabic countries as well, some number.
Yeah, there's a few of those, but the vast majority are black-led countries.
Yeah, right. How are they justifying that? Because I'm sure there's nothing on the State Department.
I haven't heard anything I would consider a justification.
No, it's
let's
just like,
look into that, John.
This is just the way it is.
Speaking of talking points, they might need one. Maybe you can make one up for them.
Oh Lord, don't come asking me for advice.
All right, let's go to Dwight calling us from the city of Compton. Hi, Dwight.
Yeah.
Good morning, Dominique. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
Good morning, KBLA family, Tavis, and everyone. Thank you, Dominique, for all the great things you're doing. John, I have to disagree with you 100% because Republicans are basically cover for white supremacy and racism because these commercials, even as far as Donald Trump showing these commercials, talking about, we're not cutting Medicaid, but he's pushing the bills with it. So these are just Fox News commercial BS that Donald Trump comes on the air because he speaks out of both sides of the mouth. They tell you one thing and do something else. Just like at one time, I know the Democrats were racist, and they started the Ku Klux Klan party, especially the Southern Democrats they used to call Dixiecrats. But that whole situation, and the Republicans was Abraham Lincoln's party, who was against slavery. But things change back and forth. It changes back and forth. But one thing, John, I have to say that they're not trying to do anything that's going to benefit black people because they claim they're for abortion rates, and they're just afraid that America is 50-50, half minority, half white. They're taking away women's health care as a claim that they're for abortion rights. They're not against abortion rights because they don't fund anything that helps children. They take away education. They take away birth control. They take away a woman having that is need of medical care. They let her sit in the operating room. And it's just a front, John. I hate to say it. It's just a front for being for the rich and the races. That's what that R in Republicans for is for the rich and the races.
Let's allow John to respond to
it. Okay, John.
You said a whole bunch.
Yes, sir. No, I appreciate that, Brother Dwight, and I appreciate you leaning in with the fullness of your passion and perspective, brother. No, I mean, look, here's what I would say. I mean, I think that there is a diversity of perspectives and experiences within the Republican Party. You're right to sort of highlight the irony of the history, right? Because you go from Lincoln being a Republican to the abolition of slavery, then you go to the Southern Dixiecrats and so forth. And, one common sort of thread here is the fact that under the Democratic Party, the Dixiecrats were concentrated in the South. And then, of course, after the Civil Rights Act and so forth, what began to happen pretty quickly was that suddenly the Republican Party found its base constituency in the white South, right? And now
Southern strategy,
right. Although really it started under Goldwater in 1964, even before before Nixon and the Southern strategy started implementing things. But so there is a reality in American history where, particularly in the South, there is a visceral dynamic, right, between a lot of white folks.
And by South, you mean Orange County?
Well,
anyway,
Dominic trying to pull us back to the California.
No, South just reminding us that the South is everywhere in America.
And yet, to the extent to the extent to which racial prejudice, is certainly a thing in our history. It is a bipartisan thing. It's not just one party or the other, even at any given.
But at the moment, the Republican Party is clearly the party of white supremacy. Clearly, not even close.
Well, Dwight brought up the point about Medicaid, and it is worth noting the class dynamic here too, right?
Absolutely.
Because I think that there's a much larger number of Republicans who are people who are sensitive towards sort of business interests and financial and commercial interests, who don't really have thoughts
sensitive
about
towards it. Is that how you call it?
That's how I'm calling
the
it.
Oligarchy.
But I'm saying whose focus is
you're
on
a billionaire who wants tax cuts for the rich and wants to cut Social Security. That means you're sensitive to business.
But Dominic, your average Republican Republican is not a billionaire. Your average Republican is is a white middle class person.
Yeah, but they're
who may own
voting.
a small
But they're
business,
voting in
own a
support of the
401k
interests of
or
the
whatnot.
billionaires.
But I'm just
The
saying
big
that-
ugly tax
I'm
package
just
is
saying that
for
I
billionaires.
think that most people don't necessarily. I mean, we can talk about unconscious bias and so on and so forth, but I don't think most people walk around with consciously sort of negative, like racial sort of points of view and so forth. I think to the extent to which you do have that is going to be particularly among white people, particularly concentrated in the South because of the unique history of the South, and the South does represent the base of the Republican Party. So I'm acknowledging that Dwight has some basis for the point that he's making, but. You never want to paint with too broad a brush, because whether you're talking about black people, white people, Democrats, or Republicans, it breaks down in a much more complex way. And yet, at the end of the day, we do pool together in this binary system to either elect, Donald Trump or not, right? So to the extent to which that has a racial impact, you could say it really doesn't matter whether somebody is or is not a racist, depending on whether or not their actions contribute to that.
The intention is the outcome is more important than the income. The
intention. You can make that argument.
You can make that argument, and regardless of what their intentions are, or whether they're billionaires or not, it's also clear that the agenda of the Republican Party, as reflected in the bill they're trying to cram down the American people's throats right now, is in support of the very rich. It is in support of the oligarchy. That's what it is. You can say you're not cutting Social Security, but they've already cut staffing at offices. They've already made cuts that are impacting seniors, that are older adults, is what we're supposed to call them now. So we can sit here and philosophize about who is the Republican Party and who their base is and whether they have real racial thought. The fact of the matter is the policies are anti-black, and they're anti-middle class and low income. They're anti-working class and low income, not just pro-rich people. They're anti-middle class. I know you've got to clap back. We'll get to that when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
May 6th was World Asthma Day, and it's a critical time to raise awareness about your asthma. Did you know that Black Americans are approximately 5 times more likely than white Americans to visit the emergency department due to their asthma? Managing your asthma is possible with regular checkups, avoiding known triggers, using prescribed medications correctly, and creating an asthma action plan with your healthcare professional. An action plan is a personalized plan you create with your doctor that shows you what to do and what medications to take to help control your asthma when you're having a hard time breathing or having an asthma attack. Stay aware. Have a plan, because your health matters. For more tips and resources on managing your asthma, visit luma-edu.com. luma-edu.com. This message is brought to you by Amgen and AstraZeneca.
Are you ready to play? Then jump into the LA 84 Foundation's Free Playday Block Party, a community celebration for all ages, including live music, dancing, LA's pro sports teams, great local food trucks, plus special giveaways for you to take home. Enjoy an exciting, fun-filled day for the entire family. Join us Saturday, June 28th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at 2141 West Adams Boulevard. To register, go to la84.org. We'll see you Saturday, June 28th at LA 84 Foundation's Free Playday Block Party.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, the music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Nearly 7 million Americans aged 65 and older are living with Alzheimer's disease, or AD. But did you know that Black adults aged 65 and older are twice as likely as white adults to develop AD? You may be able to reduce your risk by managing conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure, being physically active, eating healthy, and exercising your mind. To learn more about AD, the importance of early diagnosis and intervention, and a potential treatment option, visit treatalzearly.com. That's treatalzearly.com. This message is brought to you by AZI.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. where hate loses and love wins.
Okay, John Wood Jr. is my guest, and I was saying before we were so rudely interrupted that regardless of the intention, regardless of the demographic, the policies as exemplified by the big ugly bill that they're trying to push through are anti-working class, anti-black, and pro-billionaire.
Yeah, you're a critic of the big ugly bill. You and Musk are on the same side now, Dominique. Yeah. Hooray.
Yeah. Other than everything except
well,
that.
if you're asking my opinion on the bill, I mean, look, I think that the bill, it's obviously hypocritical insofar as Republicans, and this isn't just Donald Trump, this is so many others, have, campaigned on the idea of taming debts and deficits. And then when Republicans are in power, they tend to cut taxes and the deficit goes up. I mean, that is the historical pattern. Now, in point of fact, it is true as a statistical matter that when you cut taxes, usually you see an increase in federal returns after about 2 or 3 years or so. It's also true that at least during the Reagan administration.
Does that trickle down?
Well, I guess it's trickle up in terms of ultimately feeding more money back into the federal government in a way that bends
I have
the
to see your data because I sure haven't.
Time.
I have. That's not.
Oh, it's true.
I've,
it's true.
Okay,
If you
well,
go back and look at
to
look
use
at the numbers.
your
And
famous
I've
words,
looked at,
yeah. I need to see the numbers. Okay.
No. But yeah, you should look at the numbers. What's also true is that
I've seen
during
numbers that don't support that. But
well,
anyway, I will go back.
Yeah. No, let's look at the numbers. If you go back during the Reagan years, of course, the employment growth was dramatic during those years in which the tax cuts were taking effect. So, I mean, tax cuts.
But we didn't
can
see
work
that in 2016. In fact, we saw employment growth under Biden, even though he had so many other problems.
There was employment growth under both Biden and under Obama, particularly in the last few years of his term, Trump's first administration, until you come up to COVID. And all of that gets wiped out.
He was getting credit for what Obama did, but okay.
And then the unemployment rate continued to decline under Biden. Economic success is like multivariate. We always want to sort of put it down to just tax cuts or spending or whatnot.
Right. You're going into the weeds of tax policy, and what I asked you if whether the policies are anti-working class and anti-black, and that's what we see in that budget bill. And it sounds like you're not ready to embrace that.
Well, I don't think the tax cuts are anti-middle class. I will say that tax cuts coupled with public benefit cuts coupled with tariffs, right? Now that's when you start getting into territory. That's
when you start killing the middle class,
anti-working class.
Okay, I want to squeeze in Eric because he's been waiting. Eric from Carson, you're on with John Wood Jr. I'm sure he'll come back. He usually agrees to come back.
I try to make the time.
Good morning, Dominique and John.
Hey,
I have a mouthful to say in 60 seconds. Can I have 60 seconds?
Yeah, you got it. You're going to have to be strict with yourself.
Okay. I believe there is more going on here that's deeper than California or the United States. I believe from my research that the elitists, who are the richest people in the world, have a plan that are 190.
Sorry about that, Eric.
I believe the elitists, who are the richest people in the world, have a plan that our 195 nations are now taking the baton and are spearheading the plan. Trump and all presidents are a pea in a bigger pod. Trump is beneficial because he lacks political experience and is willing to go rogue. The plan, I believe, is global alliance.
I mean,
go ahead, John. Yeah, you were quick, Eric. Eric is saying something that many people have been saying for a long time, going back to the New World Order and George Herbert Walker Bush.
But we do have global alliance, don't we?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Look, we live in a time where you have a class of people, not just in the United States of America, but around the world, cosmopolitan elites and so forth who have more of a relationship to their peers across global society than they do to any one particular country or
including
place, right?
our president.
Well, sure, but it's just but to Eric's point, you know, and I'm not trying to be like conspiratorial or anything. I actually just think this is kind of out in the open. You know, you do have it's an interesting time to be alive in humanity, because you have a rung of society that is creating something of a multinational kind of governing structure, even in a soft way, right? That I think is probably detached from the interest of actual nations and actual places.
I mean, we argued about this last time. To me, that's a definition of fascism. It's the merger of the corporation with the state.
Yeah, I think it's international.
International fascism, that's pretty much what I was saying.
Yeah. I mean, I struggle with how to term it. Fascism, historically, the technical sense, is sort of nation-based by definition. But sure, I mean, you can look at it, I guess, in that way. But I do think nations matter. I think communities matter. And to bring it back to LA, I think a politics that doesn't respect the dignity of people in communities is a politics that is both impractical and unethical.
You got to leave it there,
that's
John.
The sort of politics we've embraced today, unfortunately.
Man, we were just getting started.
I was just getting warmed up.
All right, news, traffic, and sports. And then we're talking transgender folks. Yeah, we're ramping it up. KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Tammy Eswick with BIN News Now. President Trump is back in the U.S. after leaving the G7 summit early, leading some to speculate that he's planning on talking. This audio may be disturbing to some.